Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. This is the 3-Month Vacation. I'm Sean D'Souza. Many years ago, one of my friends visited New Zealand. He was curious about how I was working, what I was doing here, because he saw a big change once I moved to New Zealand. And that's what he wanted to do as well. Now, when I say friends, you automatically assume that he might have been just like me. He was a freelancer. He had those kind of resources at his disposal. But no, he was a big industrialist. He had factories, he had workers, he had a big enterprise going for him. And that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to bring it all to New Zealand. And we had this theoretical conversation where I would set up everything for him. Well, that's the way he thought, at least. He said, how about you set up everything for me? How about you set up the factory, you set up all this stuff? And that's not what I do, but theoretically, that's what we were discussing. And I said, you know what? You're looking for surety. You're looking for things to happen in a certain way. You're going to leave your country and you're going to move to New Zealand. Everything's going to work out exactly as it was in your country. What happens if I do all that stuff? What happens if I could do all that stuff and set up everything for you, and the day before you get on the plane, there's an earthquake? This is the kind of surety that we're looking for. We're looking for having all those ducks lined up in a row, all those factories set up, and you don't really know what's going to happen, and you don't know how it's going to happen. And that is what we covered in the last episode, which was part 1. It's there all the time, the fear of making a mistake, and you have to have that point where you just make that leap, that redundancy factor. That's the first thing that we covered. The second thing we looked at was vision. If your vision is to have lots and lots of money and to have power, then it's relatively easy because there's so much stuff out there that once you get moving, you can double and treble and keep going. But if your vision is slightly different, if your vision is about spending more time with your family, if your vision is about something specific that's not related to money, it becomes more difficult and you have to claw it back. As I said, every single day, I think about it all the time. How do I get more time to read the books I want, do the things I want, paint? And the activities keep growing. So holding on to that vision and doing great work, that is very hard. And those are the things that we covered in part 1 of this episode. This is part 2, and it's a very short one, but it's a very important one. It covers the concept of focus. But not just focus, but having a hatchet person when you're dealing with focus. So what is focus to me? Focus to me is less about persistence, and it's more about getting rid of distractions. This takes me to my first mentor, Doug Hitchcock, who was also my first hatchet person. Now, a hatchet person is someone with a hatchet, and hatchet just chops things off, as you know. Well, I didn't know much about marketing, and at that time, Jay Abraham was one of the most well-respected, well-known marketers on the planet. Now, there were other marketers, but they seemed to be less eager to teach. They seemed less eager to give. And among the hundreds of books that I borrowed from the library, there was only one by Jay Abraham. Now, this led me to getting onto his list, to buying his book. And this was a big, thick blue book. And it cost $300. We knew so little that the first 30 pages of that book took us months. Like, I would say 3, 4, 5 months to implement just the first 30 pages. But by that point, we were well and truly on Jay Abraham's list. And I wanted everything that he put out. So imagine the day that I got this long sales letter. Now, back in the year 2002, 2003, sales letters came in the mail, physically, in this envelope. And what it told me in that sales letter, that very long sales letter, was that Jay Abraham was going to have a seminar. And to get a seat, I needed to pay $5,000. Now, I should have been horrified. I lived in New Zealand. I was paying off this huge mortgage, and $5,000 US was approximately $11,000 at that point in time. Plus, there would be airfares, accommodation, transport, food, and other costs involved. And I was so excited about it, I went to Doug Hitchcock and I told him about it, and I said, I want to go for this event. You know what happened next, right? Doug brought down his hatchet. He forbade me from embarking on such a silly adventure. What are you going to learn that's worth $10,000 to $11,000, he said. In effect, he wasn't stopping me from learning or buying into products, but he was certainly helping me focus. And being a hatchet person is not just restricted to money, which is of course the biggest struggle at the start, but it's also the other aspects. Most entrepreneurs tend to be restless. They want to do it all. And I wanted to learn everything, do everything, and promise everything. And that's where my wife, Renuka, took over where Doug left off. To this day, I'm the one who conjures up dozens of possible products and workshops, and she gently cancels it off the list. It doesn't mean that we don't push ourselves. We take the weekends off, we take our breaks, we take our vacations, but when we're at work, we still put in a decently long day. I'm so happy for those who say they spend just 15 minutes at the office. I'm so glad that people can do all their work in just 4 hours every week. But I know that to create great work, you have to labor over it and you have to make it better all the time. And this restless nature means that you're going to need a hatchet person so that you don't burn yourself out. Someone in your networking group could help, or it could be a friend who you can meet. It could be a coach, but it doesn't need to be a coach. In 5000 BC itself, we have a Taking Action forum, and the members post their 3 goals. Yes, only 3. And they work through it bit by bit. So you'll find that if you ask for help, you'll get it, but expecting to figure out everything yourself, that is the hardest task of all. Your hatchet person has to have a single role, and that role is to get you to cut the stuff that you don't need so that you can focus on what you have to do. And trying to find a mentor like Doug is a good task, but it's often not necessary. Clients often mention that it would be wonderful to have someone like Doug. It would be wonderful to have someone like Renuka around. But when they say that, they're missing the point. The point is that you live in a world where you may not have Doug or Renuka, and that you still have to make that leap forward. You still have to take that jump. You still have to go from being in a job to being an entrepreneur and then staying an entrepreneur. So you can't just hope and wish. You have to find someone who's good at getting you to stick to the 3 things that you need to do. And you have to make sure that you're working on just 3 big projects at any given point in time. And should we forget, because we all forget, we all want to do this and that and that and that, then it's the job of the hatchet person. That hatchet person brings us back on track. Focus, it's about elimination, and that's it. Most people are too scared to make the leap, and rightly so. I was afraid to go through that whole exercise of putting El Capitan, which is the new operating software, on my computer. And guess what? There was this nervous wait, and then it turned out to be fine. Well, almost fine. one of my programs wouldn't work. But again, it could be easily replaced. And that's what you're going to find as well. Despite this leap into the crazy world of entrepreneurship, you'll find that some programs, they may not work. Some things that you expected will not work, but you'll manage, and then you'll start to prosper. Most of all, you'll never want to go back to a job ever again. But how do you know that it's all going to work? How do you know that what you're going to produce in the future is useful to somebody else? The answer lies in the factor of demand. If already you have a ton of competition in place, that's very good. It may not sound very good, but it is very good. And the reason for that is that when there is demand, there are already customers in place. And we will go into this in another podcast. But just so you know, look for competition, because that tells you that your idea is going to work. And with that, we go to the summary of this episode. The leap into the unknown is always scary. If it's any consolation for you, I made it extremely hard for myself. I moved countries. I changed into a career where I had almost no experience. And then I added the burden of a mortgage on top of it all. Now, you may find that you don't want to do something so crazy, and so you give yourself a deadline. And this is what that whole making yourself redundant is all about. To create a deadline where you're going to say, I'm going to leave at this point in time. And that's how I moved from India to New Zealand in the first place. And also kind of how I moved from cartooning to marketing. It wasn't that cut and dry, but there was this sense of a deadline. By February, I'm going to stop cartooning and go into marketing. It didn't work out that well. There was a little bump along the way, but it works out that way, where you set yourself that redundancy factor in place. You create the redundancy. And so you give yourself a deadline and you put away some money so that you can last 6 months to a year. Or fate may step in and throw you in the deep end like it did with Paul Wolf. When Lehman Brothers collapsed, the phone stopped ringing and he had to do what he had to do. So those are the factors that are going to make you redundant, or you can make yourself redundant. However, one thing is clear. The fear is greater when you're waiting. It's greater because you're waiting for something to happen and all these thoughts rush through your head. When you're in the thick of the action, you have to start executing. You have to change strategy to keep your head above water. Don't sit around with this website hoping that customers are going to come in through the door. Don't just say, I'm going to have a blog and everything's going to work out fine. No, that's not how it's going to happen. Start out with consulting, but then do a bit of training, do a bit of leverage. Go out there, freelance. You have to do something to generate the income. And then that's when you do your blogging, that's when you do your website, that's when you do everything else. Don't just sit there waiting for everybody to come to your website. People will tell you that you just buy into this program, you press this button, and you will have endless clients and income. And if you make that mistake of buying into it, that's good, because it's a lesson well learned. So you move on, you go out there into the real world, meet real clients, do real workshops, do real presentations. Yes, it's going to terrify you. Yes, it terrifies everybody else. But the internet is your backup plan. It's not where you start, and I hope that this message is getting across. It's not the only source of work. And if it is the only source of work, then expect that results are going to come 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, and that's when things start to stabilize a bit. So that's the first point. The second point takes us to the vision. Now, the vision is pretty clear at the start. You feel that vision, that's why you jump into this whole new world. But then, a bit of greed and madness sets in. You can't help it. You read about how some guy is making millions, and then you want to do the same. and you read about how they have thousands or hundreds of thousands of customers, and then you want to do the same. And it's very frustrating. It's very depressing. I used to have this, even though we had been in business for so many years, I had to unsubscribe from these newsletters. They depressed me because I felt that I had to live up to that expectation, and I don't. And I know I don't, and I don't care anymore, but I still stay unsubscribed from newsletters like that. You lose that vision, and then you have to claw it back. You may start to work endlessly, and the things that you set out to do, like spend time with your family or just have some downtime, that is going to get lost in the pressure. There is no doubt about it. That's going to get lost because you'll feel this drive to get the work done, to keep your head above water. You'll get upset with everybody, and that's when you have to claw back. The battle with work never stops, and you have to pull out your vision from the rubble. You have to put it up on the wall and stay focused on it. When you keep that vision simple, then it's easier to execute. Well, not exactly easy, but easier. So my personal vision is a 3-month vacation, and that enables us to be more efficient, to help clients for the entire 9 months that we're here. It helps us to do things in a different way than if we worked all the time. So when we're starting up, we have fear, we have the problem with vision, and finally, we have a hatchet person. All this talk about focus seems to be about keeping your head on the task, keeping your eyes on the ball. But how can you do that if you keep scampering off in every direction? And this is where a hatchet person comes into play. You don't need a fancy coach. You don't have to find the perfect mentor. All you need to do is to find a friend in your networking group or someone you can meet once a week. Just someone maybe on an online group, maybe 5000 BC, maybe not. And that's all you really need. You want to focus on 3 things, and the job of the hatchet person is to ask awkward questions and to cut out all of that scampering that we do as business owners. In India, I grew up listening to a fable, and this fable was called The Monkey's Curse. Here's how it goes. To catch a monkey, a trapper would put lots of warm, fragrant rice in an earthen pot. The mouth of the pot was small enough for the monkey to slip in an open palm, but the moment he clutched the rice, he couldn't free himself. To be free, he needed to let go of at least some of the rice. But the monkey was desperate for the rice, all the rice, and so he would struggle to get his hand out without letting go of the rice. And that would give the trapper enough time to throw a net. And then the monkey was trapped for life. We had to battle this monkey's curse many times. We wanted to hold on to what was safe, what we knew. It was no fun stopping what we did and then stepping into the unknown. I can't speak for you, but I know that if I could go back in time, I would still be very afraid. And then I jump. And that is the end of this episode. In future episodes, I'll talk about how you start up a business, what to look for. This was about the mental game that we have to play with ourselves. Now, I mentioned 5000 BC a lot, and people ask me, do I need 5000 BC if I'm just starting up in business? And I think it is important. I don't think it's critical, but I think it's important. And the reason why it's important is, say you read the brain audit and you really love the brain audit. Now, the reason why we started up 5000 BC was so that people could implement the brain audit. That's what it started out back in 2003-04. We didn't start it out with all of this information. There must have been like 15 articles on 5000 BC. Now there are hundreds of them. But we started it out so that you could implement the brain audit, so you could get yourself going. And admittedly, a lot of the people at the start were already in business. But today, we have a mix. We have people who are just starting out and they're working their way through 5000 BC, and those that are in business. Now remember that when you're in business doesn't mean that you're already settled in. It just means that you've been in business for a while. And what you're doing is you're going through this factor of growth. And that's why 5000 BC makes sense. And that's my answer to the question, should I join 5000 BC even though I don't already have a business in place? What 5000 BC will not do for you is it won't tell you, okay, here's everything on a platter, now go do it. No, we don't really know what you want to do. So I can't tell you, here's the idea, go and implement it. It's not like, here's a dish, go eat it. You still have to figure out, what am I going to do? And even that is a process. That's a process of elimination. But if you think that I'm just going to join and I'm going to get the ideas, I'm going to get the execution, well, then I don't think 5000 BC is the place for you. I don't think anything is the place for you because you're expecting way too much. You still have to have an idea. You still have to have at least a vague idea of what you're doing. So it's like, I'm going to be teaching Photoshop, or I'm going to be teaching people how to cook a dish with just 6 ingredients, or I'm going to teach people how to do podcasts differently. You have to have some idea. And it doesn't matter if it's a great idea or a bad idea, as long as the idea exists, as long as there's competition out there, it is an idea that can be developed and improved and then made very prominent and marketable. And that's how 5000 BC helps. So go and read your copy of the Brain Audit. And if you've read it, read it again. And then if you want to join 5000 BC, we can help you. And 2 more things. The article writing course, that's on the 17th of September. And we have only 30 copies of the home study version. So 17th of September, that's your date. There's also the 15th of October where we're selling the pre-sale course. It's just 1 PDF. We call it the course. It helps you understand how we sell stuff. I want to thank Paul Wolf for sending in his experiences of how he set up his business and where he is right now. Joe Norton. Joe does the music on the 3-month vacation, and I've never thanked him before, but here you go, Joe. Thank you very much. And of course, my hatchet person, Renuka. She's there to make sure that I don't go crazy because I have that tendency to go crazy. It's 4:31 a.m. right now. Time to edit this, get it across to Joe, and then upload it to iTunes. Bye for now.